Welcome to PintheQ Productions. If you are interested in the culture of the fire service and keeping tradition alive, you have come to the right place.
Everybody, welcome back to PintheQ Productions. We have a special guest with us today. You saw the announcement go out on our Instagram page just to let you know it was coming, and it's finally here. Obviously, with COVID going on, unable to make the trip to Cincinnati, which I was looking forward to doing, but for me, that was about a 10-hour trip, and with everything being shut down and all the delays, and of course, not being able to walk around the firehouse with the brothers and sisters always stinks, but we do have Zoom. Thank God for technology. So we're able to bring Bobby to you on Zoom, which everyone knows in 2020, this Zoom thing is a big deal. Everyone's doing this from their homes. But we're here in the studio today, and we are really excited, Bobby, to get you on the show.
Thanks.
We've been trying to do this for some time now, and we are here. So, Bobby, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
My name is Bobby Shelton. I'm a firefighter paramedic for the city of Cincinnati. I've been in the fire service 29 years, the last 25 with the city of Cincinnati. I spent the vast majority of my career on a truck company, and for the last 10 years, I've been assigned to a heavy rescue. And in Cincinnati, our heavy rescue also does all the HAZ-MAT. So not only do I do technical rescue, but we do HAZ-MAT response. So that's kind of my background as far as what I'm doing right now. I also have some off-day gigs like most firefighters.
Right.
I teach for the state of Ohio, the Ohio Fire Academy, and I teach for a community college here in the city in the fire science program. So we've got in our fire science program kids who are just now coming into the fire service, whereas when I teach for the state, we go around to different departments, both volunteer and career, and we do fire behavior labs and everything that incumbent or firefighters who've been on the job for years can benefit from.
It's always fun, too, when you have the salty dogs coming in to teach. And at the beginning, they got their arms crossed and you're trying to get through to them. And then finally, when their eyes open up and their ears open up, you're like, this is why you're here, to pay attention.
And the other thing is, too, I learned early on as a teacher to utilize those guys.
Absolutely.
Those guys who have more time than you or have had different experiences from you, utilize those guys because they're going to make the class better. Initially, they come in and we call them prisoners. Okay, who of you has been forced to be here?
There's people watching right now. I'm like, yeah, that was me.
Right. And I've been that guy too.
Sure.
Who's been forced to be here. And then once you break that ice, they're more likely to be accepting. Once they know that all right, I'm being forced to be here, but if you say something I can use, I'm all about it. Absolutely. And generally they come around. Yeah,
and those guys they'll give you experiences that they've had, and then you can bounce ideas off each other, and then everyone else starts to listen, especially the new firefighters, which is great because they need to hear those life lesson stories.
Right.
So, Bobby, bring me back to the beginning, brother. When you started thinking about becoming a firefighter, I see you smiling, so I know this is going to be good. How did this all become for you?
Now, according to my mother, and I'm not going to say that she's wrong, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I wanted to be a firefighter. We lived in a 4-family apartment building, and our downstairs neighbor, who his boys are my age, 54, and he's got one that's a couple years older, we used to play together. But he was a firefighter. And back then, in the mid-'60s, early '70s, the fire department used to do block inspections where they go out and inspect apartment buildings and all sorts of multifamilies, businesses, and what have you. So they would come on the apparatus, and I would see them. And my mother tells the story that when they would come around, I had some galoshes, and a little raincoat and a plastic fire helmet. And I took the washing machine hose off of the washing machine. Now, this is what she says. And I went out and would always talk to the guys. And like all kids, you climb on the apparatus and do this and that. When I went to elementary school, the firehouse was right next to the elementary school that I went to. And so during recess, I would sit outside the firehouse. And during the good weather, we'd always have the doors open. It wasn't like the security issues we had to have now since 9/11 and all that.
Right.
And the firefighters would come out and talk to me. My neighbor was there, and he would always call me his son. And I got to know the different officers and the different drivers and all that. And that started my love of the fire department. But then the other thing you got to remember too is that in the early 70s, that's when Emergency came out.
Now, I love that show.
And I was all about Emergency. I was it. So between, going to the firehouse next to my school, having a neighbor that was firefighter, and Emergency, at 4 years old, I knew this is what I wanted. I didn't want anything else.
So your path was already set for you, just like
I set my path. And my mother was a nurse. So she was very obviously involved in healthcare and helping people. Good. And the incredible thing about my mom is she was a single parent. So I'm the youngest of her 5 kids. I'm 54. My oldest sister is 74.
Wow.
But I was on that path anyway, that this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. And I would do anything to get this job.
So bring me to, your adolescent years as you're coming up. You're like, your dream is still there, right? You want to become a firefighter?
All the time. It never waned. I always wanted it. I took the test for the Cincinnati Fire Department the first time in 1984. I hadn't even graduated from high school. I graduated high school later on in 84, but when they offered the test,
right,
I took it. And at the time, they were really looking for a more diverse fire department. So, they were looking for males, females, especially African-American males, African-American, and just females in general. So I took the test in 1984 for the first time. Back then, and I just found this out recently, they had what was called the rule of threes. And so what the rule of threes was, is so it's me and you and John over here who are up for a job.
Right.
So the first go round, they pick you. So that leaves me, John, and this other guy. The second go round, they pick John. So it's me and 2 other guys. If they don't pick me that third time, I'm out.
Okay. That's the rule of threes, huh?
That's the rule of threes. And from what I've understood, I just asked someone recently about this, they still do something along those lines. So that was in 1984. And our civil service list is good for 2 years.
Okay.
So every time that the fire department offered the test, I took it. And every time I got booted out on the rule of threes. It wasn't based on test scores or anything like that, because I always scored in a higher percentile of males, period. But I always just was subject to the rule of threes. So between 1984 and 1991, I took the test every time it was offered.
Bobby, that's incredible. You just kept going and going and going and fighting for what you wanted.
And between that time, in 1989, I got married. And my wife knew I wanted to be a firefighter. We were relatively newly married, and I said, well, I want to be a firefighter. If I can't get on here, I want to start applying other places.
Awesome.
So I went down to Lexington and applied a couple times. I had some friends that lived in Lexington, went there. Didn't get on for whatever reason. Came back here. I eventually got hired by a small suburban fire department full-time outside the city of Cincinnati.
Now, what was that like for you, bro? What was it like to finally get on the fire department? It wasn't where you wanted to be in Cincinnati, but you got on.
I've heard everybody on the cast say this, but it really is, you hit the lottery.
100%.
It's like, especially when from 4 years old, this is all I ever wanted to do.
But even more for you, you kept fighting for what you were going to do, and that's awesome.
Right. And I hit the lottery then, and I worked, and they weren't a busy fire department. A lot of suburban fire departments aren't necessarily busy, but I learned stuff.
Right.
And it was a great foundation. I worked with some really good firefighters there. And what's funny, one of the guys who I was on the same day with, he wanted to be a Miami-Dade fireman. That's what he wanted to do. And he left that suburban fire department. He actually got a job in Miami-Dade.
Ah, good for him.
But then he came back to Cincinnati.
Homesick?
No, family.
Okay.
So he tried out for Cincinnati and got on Cincinnati. When I was at the suburban fire department, I was junior to him. When he came to the city, he was junior to me.
It's funny, man, how it works that like that.
So, you know, just experiences like that. And you and I were talking earlier about 6 degrees of separation. There's always somebody we know somewhere
Right.
from some department. And I've had the privilege teaching for the IAFF for 12 years, teaching HAZ-MAT and some technical rescue stuff for 12 years for the IAFF. And I have had the privilege and opportunity to teach for the largest fire department in this country, FDNY. And the smallest fire department I ever taught for was the Lehigh Valley International Airport Fire Department. And I think that local had like 7 members.
Wow, that's awesome. So you run the gamut from, you know, a large agency to a small, you know, more intimate.
And every place in between.
That's great. So walk me back to the fire academy for you. What was it like for you to go to the fire academy? Because I listening to you and hearing you talk about your dream as early on as 4 years old. 84, you started taking tests. It took you a while, right? 89 before you got on.
No, it took me to 91 to get on with the suburban fire department.
Right.
Then I got on with the suburban fire department. It took me another 4 years to get on with the city.
So when you went to the fire academy for the suburban fire department, walk me through that. What was that like for you?
It was different than the city's fire academy. The fire academy back then, it was a 200 hour. That's what they call it, 200. I think now in the fire academy, it's 240. The Firefighter 2 is 240. It was 200 hour. And you can always tell how old somebody is when they say, well, I went to the 200 hour course. Well, you've been doing this at least 25 years, if not more.
Yeah.
And it was at a vocational school.
Okay.
But again, it was the realization of my dream. Right. So whatever, I was just trying to soak it all up. I just wanted to learn as much as I could. And I was so happy to be there. It didn't matter. There was no subject that now hindsight would have been boring as all get out.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was all brand new.
Soaking it in.
That's all I did.
Right. I mean, that's the best recruit, you know better than anybody being an instructor. I mean, the best recruit is a sponge.
Yes.
You know, just take it all in.
Yes.
So walk me through this now. So your wife, you're on the fire department. How's that going at home? How's she dealing with all of it? Because it's a culture shock.
You know what? My wife, we've been married for 32 years.
God bless you.
And my wife is the strongest person I know, by far. She is one of the smartest people I know. And she is the most loving person I know. She has never, ever discouraged me from doing anything I wanted to do. And sometimes there were things that I did as far as training and others that put us in a tight sometimes. But she never discouraged it. She always supported it. And so it wasn't really too much of a culture shock because being raised by a nurse, I kind of had the gallows humor thing going anyway.
Yes.
And I can remember very young, a teenager, when my grandfather, my mother's father, was dying, she didn't want him to be in a nursing home. So she brought him home with us. And I helped her take care of him. And this is as a 14, 15-year-old.
Very special person to do something like that.
So I had that gallows humor. My wife has a great sense of humor. And so you've got my strong personality, because my mother was extremely strong. My wife's strong personality, but we truly complement each other.
That's great. Yeah, support system is huge for fire service and has a lot to do with the success of the person, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. I will not argue that, because I know personally that I could not have done the things that I've done in my career without her. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
That's great to hear, man. So tell me about Cincinnati, brother. Like, you're at this suburban firehouse, right? And how's it happen? How's it come to be?
I'm working for the suburban fire department, not making a lot of runs, but it was, like I said, it was a good foundation.
Right.
That's where I became an EMT, because in Cincinnati, in Ohio in general, you have to be an EMT firefighter or an EMT paramedic. It's not separate here. And the vast majority of fire departments here do their own transport anyway.
Right.
So I got on with the suburban department in 1991. Didn't have a lot of runs, but we did have runs, and we used to make runs to a large worldwide company in that running area. It's only, I think, maybe 2 or 3 square miles, if that was the running area, mostly residential, but I learned.
Right.
And so
like you said, it's a great foundation.
It was a great foundation. When I came to the city, it was culture shock.
Right.
The fire academy, I went to basically a vocational school for the 200 hours that I went through, the firefighter training I went through for the suburban fire department. But when I got on with the city of Cincinnati, it is a structured in-house fire academy. And, first off, the city of Cincinnati, it was the first paid fire department in the country. April 1st, no pun intended, April 1st, 1853 is when the Cincinnati Fire Department came into existence as a paid fire department. So things like the fire pole and tiller trucks and all that kind of starts here.
Wow.
And there's a website, actually, cfdhistory.com, that you can find out a lot of information about the Cincinnati Fire Department. So when I came here to the city of Cincinnati, the first day, we had a drill instructor who was in charge.
Outstanding.
And I was never in the military. So some of my classmates, when we came in, they were in the military. It's no big deal to them.
Right.
But this guy barking and yelling at everything was so much of a culture shock. Now, I was so happy to be there. I didn't care
right.
that you yelled at me.
Exactly. You were floating anyway.
Right. Because now I'm at the place where I really wanted to be.
Right.
Not just the fire service, but the fire department I wanted to work for. I was born and raised in the city of Cincinnati. I went to Cincinnati public schools, the whole bit. So now I'm where I want to be.
You're home.
But this 16 weeks of being yelled at and stuff, and the one thing I learned was I tried very hard not to tell anybody about my past of being a firefighter already, because that is the kiss of death. Because eventually somebody will say, well, in my old fire department, we did it. No.
Worst thing to say.
So I kept it on. I never told anybody. Now, there were friends of mine who I grew up with who were on the fire department, and they didn't drop a dime on me. I didn't, but the instructors knew the background of people.
Yeah. Plus, they see it in your skill.
But, I still tried to play very low key.
Right. Smart. We
were out doing an evolution in the drill yard one day, and one of the captains, he dropped a dime on me. And, hey, Shelton, do this. I know you were a firefighter someplace else. No. Yeah. So, I did it because I was ordered to do it. But still, and I tell my students that all the time, my students at the community college, if you get hired someplace, and maybe you came from someplace, don't say ever, we did it this way at so-and-so.
Right, because reality,
that will mark you for life.
And they don't care where you did it somewhere else.
No, because this is our way.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
And so even when I'm teaching at the community college, or even when I'm teaching for the fire academy, I have to be very cognizant of not integrating Cincinnati things. Well, this is how we do it. Doesn't matter how you do it in Cincinnati.
Right.
Columbus has their way. Akron, Toledo, Cleveland, they all have their own ways. Other departments. So you have to be very general and speak in broad terms. Now, obviously in the fire service, there are certain things, there are certain terms that are just indigenous to the fire service.
Absolutely.
Got it. But don't start going into, in Cincinnati, we do it this way.
Right.
Don't volunteer it. Now, you know, sometimes people will take you aside and they'll say, hey, how do you guys do it here? That's one thing.
Yeah.
But
that's dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not in the big class, no.
Right. So you graduate from the Cincinnati Fire Academy. You're home. You made it, right? Your dream came true.
Yes.
I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's the truth, right? It's the truth. So you graduate the academy. What was your first assignment?
You're going to love this. So my first assignment, my first quote unquote permanent house, you're a sixth man. Our companies are 5-man companies, and a sixth man is a probie who travels from firehouse to firehouse. They really don't truly have a home for the first year or two.
Okay.
But my first made assignment was to Engine 51.
You got to be kidding me.
So, and they were a paramedic engine company. Now, all of our engine and truck companies are paramedic companies.
Right.
But my first house was Engine 51. My senior man was my neighbor who lived downstairs.
That is awesome.
So when I walked in the first day, my son just walked in here. And he gave me a big hug, and that was my first senior man, my neighbor, who knew from 4 years old that I was going to do this job eventually. And I got to work with him for the first couple of months I was on the fire department before I was transferred to a truck company that didn't have enough members on it.
Bobby,
and then I got made on the truck.
What was that like for you, man?
To go from an engine to a truck?
No, to be in that house with your neighbor. I mean, that'd be huge for you. Was that by design, or it just happened?
No, it was not by design. It just happened.
That's crazy.
And I probably hadn't seen him probably in 20 years.
I bet you it was just as special for him as it was for you.
You know, he'll play it low key, and he would probably say,
yeah.
But he was happy to see me as I was to see him.
That's great. And
to work with him, and and we would reminisce when he was back on the firehouse that was in my neighborhood, and when they would come we would just sit around and talk about stuff when I was a kid.
Right, something you two can share.
So that was very special for me.
Right.
And I think it was special for him. He may deny it, but I think it was special for him.
What did your mom say?
My mother was so happy when I made the fire department because she knew this was the only thing. My whole family knew, and all my friends knew that this was the only thing I wanted to do.
Yeah, to see someone fulfill their dream is so huge, and it's rewarding for the person to see it also. So
my mother, my sister and I were just talking yesterday, in fact. She lives in Indianapolis, and we were just talking, and I was telling her, I said, I'm close to retirement now because I've got 29 years in. She said, all I remember is when you were a little boy. I was like, yeah. I said, and now who would have thought that I've done this job for this long and more or less haven't had any significant injuries or anything else to have survived this long.
Thank God.
And to still enjoy going to work. There have been some assignments I haven't enjoyed as much, but to still in all be able to go to work and enjoy what I do, whatever aspect, even if it was something I didn't really want to do. My mother raised me to put 100% into whatever I do. And so, okay, I'm not on a rescue company for this period of time. Whatever my assignment is, do the best you can at it.
Absolutely.
And that's
to me
always been my goal.
I mean, based on your resume and what you're saying, it's obvious to me that you have stayed the course and you have worked your ass off this entire time to get where you're at. So nothing was handed to you. You've worked super hard to get it. And that is huge. And that's what we preach to people all the time. If all your brothers and sisters watching right now, he just said it. It's like that, right? 29 years, you remember starting. That's how it's going to be. It happens so fast. And before you know it, you got that much time on. You get go ahead.
It's funny because last month, this is October, I guess it was, last month, my senior man on the rescue company retired. And he was, in my opinion, he was the ultimate rescue guy. Knowledgeable about, and on our rescues, because we do so many different things, you're a jack of all trades, a master of none.
Right.
But he was so eloquent in the way he spoke and the way he taught and his work ethic. And when he left the rescue, he went to our mass services unit, and he was in charge of our mass services unit. And also on our heavy rescues, we're also responsible for all the SCBA maintenance, the meter maintenance, fit testing, all of that.
That all falls on the rescue.
And so when he went to the mass services unit, some of those responsibilities he took on as far as the meter maintenance and SCBA maintenance. So the guys on the heavy rescue still do that, because to be on our heavy rescue in Cincinnati, you have to be a state fire instructor. You have to be a HAZ-MAT tech or above. You have to be a rescue tech. You have to be a mask maintenance tech.
Wow.
That's to be on the heavy rescue here. And I learned so much from him and some of the other guys I work with, but especially him. He retired last month. And again, and I had to thank him for A, his friendship, and B, just for the things that he taught me.
Right, the knowledge passed down to you.
And I don't think I'll ever learn as much as he's forgotten. I had a driver that was the same way. He had been on the heavy rescue since I think dirt was formed. So I will never, ever, ever learn as much as he's forgotten. I mean, he just was a fountain of knowledge about stuff. And both of these guys, they were never trying to hide it. I find sometimes that people don't want to pass it on for whatever reason.
That's a big problem, man. That's a big problem in the fire service.
If you ask, they're going to teach you. If they see you putting forth the initiative, they're going to help you. And sometimes it's just a matter of sitting around, just being quiet and listening.
We preach. It's funny, man. We preach these things all the time. And the biggest thing is keep your mouth shut and keep your ears open, because all the knowledge, like you said, those senior guys that you talk about, when they talk, people should shut up and listen, because that's how you're going to gain that experience and knowledge. And you just said it.
Well, the scariest thing about it now is that now I'm the senior man on the rescue, which, it's been my experience traditionally that especially on the East Coast, the senior man really does mean something.
Absolutely it does.
Over time, it doesn't mean as much here as it used to. When I first came on, the senior man was responsible for training the new guys and all that stuff. Now it's more or less just kind of, for lack of a better, it's a seniority thing. Now, do guys listen? Sure, but it doesn't, and I'm not stuck on titles or anything else, but I just know how it was,
right,
and how it is now. So yeah, I am the senior man. We have 3 unit days, unit 1, 2, and 3. We work a 24/48 with a 3-week Kelly. On my unit day, I am senior to everybody. That's the driver, the lieutenant, the other 2 firefighters. On the rescue company as a whole, I'm senior even to our captain.
Wow.
So but it doesn't mean anything. It's just time.
Right.
And have I gone to a class or two? Yeah. Have I taught a class or two?
Just a few.
Yeah. You know it's bad when you go to a class. I would go to Anniston 2-3 times a year. It's bad when they know you by name. I'm not a big alcohol drinker, but I would always go to the bar on the base because that's where everybody hung out.
Yeah, network.
And the bartenders knew, oh, that's the Diet Coke guy. Okay.
Yeah.
But
people have been called worse.
Right. But that's the one thing I miss is the senior guys. And I'm not to say that every senior guy in our department, all of them are upright guys, but it just kind of seems like younger firefighters are kind of getting away from that. And it goes back to kind of what you said. Sometimes it seems like, and I'm not going to classify a whole generation, but it does sometimes seem like some people just feel they're entitled.
Yeah.
And maybe they got on the fire department the first time. I'm happy that you got on the first time. For me,
maybe no guidance.
Right. For me, it was a little bit harder. And it made me work a little bit harder. And it helped me with my work ethic even more because I got laser focused on this is what I want. And I'm going to do whatever I can to get it.
You worked hard for something you wanted. So you know that struggle. You know how hard it was to get on.
And then, with the HAZ-MAT thing, now, the first HAZ-MAT class I went to, I just about passed out. It was the most boring thing I had ever heard in my life. One of the things, though, I had always said was that if I ever was a teacher in the fire service, instruct anything, I was not going to be that guy.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So I was on with Cincinnati for a few years. I had a friend who introduced me to a friend of his who was a captain in Louisville's fire department. And we got to be very, very close. And he told me, he said one time he had his own consulting business, teaching HAZ-MAT on the side. And he sent me some books. He said, I want you to just read this and read a couple of these books. And then I want you to come down to Louisville, which is 2 hours from Cincinnati, and just kind of check this out. Now, this guy is an outstanding teacher, outstanding public speaker. And I watched and I learned so much from him. And I said, hey, I could do this. This is interesting to me. And that's how I started teaching HAZ-MAT for him first for a private company. He was also an IAFF instructor. And there were only at that time 4 Black IAFF instructors.
In the whole country?
In the whole country. I made the 5th. And so I learned so much from all these instructors because at the time, there were only like 99 IAFF instructors that did HAZ-MAT around the country.
Wow, that's not a lot.
They were from all over the country. Some guys from FDNY, some guys from Chicago, Boston, Oklahoma, all over, Florida, all over the place. And I would listen to these guys and the knowledge that they had. And again, now I'm soaking this stuff up. Yeah. I'm just really getting into this HAZ-MAT stuff and starting to read books. And there were a couple guys who especially were extremely helpful to me from FDNY. They were on HAZ-MAT 1. They were some of the founding members of HAZ-MAT 1.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And I would sit and talk to these guys, and I would go out and teach with these guys, and I would observe their teaching style and how they related to the guys and the humility, like you talked about.
Yep.
They didn't, talk themselves up. Hey, I'm with FDNY. They're just regular firemen, just like anybody else, because regardless of what department you're from or with, paid or volunteer, the fires aren't any hotter anyplace else.
You're absolutely right.
The smoke will still kill you in a heartbeat wherever you are. So these guys, I really paid attention to, and I saw how excited they were about HAZ-MAT. And for me, it was infectious. So I started getting into HAZ-MAT, and I started really getting into HAZ-MAT. I was already a state fire instructor for the state of Ohio. And then I went to Anniston and got classes there. Then I went to some FEMA instructor classes, and it just kept on building and building. And I'd go to this class and that class, and I'd bring it home and I'd teach it here or teach it there. And it just increased my love for HAZ-MAT, as well as, I mean, I love going into burning buildings. I don't know anybody who does. I saw a quote one time on the internet, no one ever said, I want to be on the ambulance today.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
Now, those people who ride our medic units, we do have some permanently assigned medic units. That's great. I am not mad at you that you want to be on the medic unit, but that's not me. Am I a paramedic? Yes. Do I do a dip on the paramedic unit every once in a while? Yeah. Am I detailed to a paramedic engine company? Sure. But I want to stay on my rescue company.
Yeah.
And I want to go into fires, and I want to do HAZ-MAT stuff, and I want to hang on the side of a building. But that's the overall love for me, of the fire service, the fire department. We have people who are just engine people. That's great. We have those people who are on a truck. You'll never hear me say anything bad about a truck, because I spent the vast majority of my career on the truck.
What's a truckie? Always a truckie.
Guys. And I am a rescue guy. I love it. I still got some truck in me, but I am a rescue guy. And had I known when I came on the fire service, because I didn't come to the rescue until late in my career, because I always thought the truck was where it's at.
Oh, yeah.
Until I got on a rescue.
Well, they pick on me because we call ourselves a truck company, but we have a pump, obviously. So, you know.
So it's a Quint.
It's a Quint, but,
yeah.
You know, we have our little slogan, you know, which is a 547 trucking company. Everybody breaks our chops, but that's all right. We run 5 also. And we show up and like, you got water in that. That's not a truck.
You know, it's funny because we had we used to be called Squad 52, and we were Squad 52 for only I think a little over 100 years. I think we were formed in 1917, 1918, I can't remember. And in 2000 something, we took on the number of the engine company that was in the house. So then we became Squad 14. And then we became Rescue 14. And now we're Heavy Rescue 14. But when we were Squad 52, when I got there, we had T-shirts. And on the back of the T-shirt, it said, how is it phrased? It says, loved by few, hated by many, respected by all.
That's awesome. That's good. I love that, though.
So, you know, and we have been called in various iterations, we've been called the God Squad because, you know, supposedly we know everything, we do everything. It's tongue in cheek. And sometimes we will refer to ourselves as the God Squad just because. So we were the first heavy rescue in the city. Then we eliminated one of our truck companies and created a second heavy rescue. So one heavy rescue covers one side of the city and the other heavy rescue covers the other side. So affectionately, we named them the Jesus Squad. So because we were
great.
So, you know, and of course that creates competition.
Sure.
So, you know, but it's all fun. I spent 3 years on one of our paramedic engine companies. It was fun. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. But I went there and it was some good experience. I think it made me a better paramedic. I can say honestly that I've not had any assignment on a fire company that I didn't enjoy. But for me, at this point in my career, as I'm winding down, the rescue is the only place I want to be. And I'll finish up and retire from the rescue. And that's again, boiled down to, I have my dream job.
It's great.
And I wish that as many people felt the way I do about the job.
Right.
Because some people, it's just a job.
Sure.
There have been some people I've worked with who they place more priority on their off-day gig than on their full-time gig. And that's your choice. But I just thoroughly enjoy what I do. And it's opened opportunities for me, like you and I were talking. I've met people I would have never, ever thought I would meet. One of my best teaching experiences when we were talking about emergency was I got to teach in LA County.
That's awesome.
And so one of the captains at the LA County Training Academy, I asked him, I said, hey, where is Engine 51? He said, now, do you mean the real Engine 51
the museum,
or the one from the TV show? Because Engine 51 is actually on the lot of Paramount Pictures.
Oh, no kidding.
And so they have an engine company and a squad. And so I went to Paramount, and they called ahead from the fire academy, told the captain I was going to come and visit. And he and I hit it off right away. I ride motorcycles. He rides motorcycles. So we talk. And they have a little golf cart that they ride around on when they go from different lots and stuff. So I saw them filming some movies and some other stuff, which was really cool. Then the next day I was teaching at the Fire Academy in LA County. They called up Station 127, which is where the TV show was filmed in the city of Carson.
Okay.
So it was like a 2-hour drive from where I was. And the guys at that firehouse, pretty much the firehouse has stayed the same.
No kidding.
For the most part, it stayed the same.
It looked the same.
But the people, the firefighters there, they know that it's an iconic place. They don't turn anybody away. They're always super nice. And, you know, I told them, I said, hey, I'm teaching at the Fire Academy. I just wanted to come by. I'm from Cincinnati. And, you know, firemen can sit down and talk about anything.
Absolutely. Look at us right now. We never met.
And we did.
Right.
And that was probably one of the best experiences that I ever had as an instructor, being able to go to, you know, LA County and teach.
And that firehouse you watched as a child. That's
and
awesome.
That firehouse that I watched as a kid.
Yeah, it's awesome. Bobby, talk to me a little bit about what the kitchen table means to you.
I sent you some pictures of our table in the firehouse.
Yep.
And I'm finding as time progresses that at least here, sometimes it doesn't seem like it means as much. The kitchen table, yeah, we sit there and eat. And I'm a firm believer in we really eating together. Maybe you're not in the mess, but you bring your own food, but eating together is a big deal.
Absolutely.
Because that's where you laugh and talk and you make fun of each other. And, you know, of course, every fire department, every firehouse has solved the world's problems a million times over at the kitchen table.
Absolutely.
Because you will have guys, you'll have the lawyer guy. Now, we actually have guys who are actually real lawyers in the fire department here.
That's cool.
One guy worked in the public defender's office as his off-day job. So we do have real lawyers. We've had people in our fire department who are PhDs and have run the gamut from outside jobs and what have you. And you can figure out the world's problems. You can laugh at yourself. You can laugh at other people. You can learn. And that was the big thing, learning more than anything at the kitchen table. Yeah, it's familial and it's family. And we're there a third of our lives and we're eating and we're cooking and everything. But I think sometimes you learn more at the kitchen table than you do at a drill on whatever you're going to drill on for the day.
Yeah, it's a much more relaxed and more comfortable atmosphere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's extremely valuable. And then if there are some who are having a hard time with whatever the situation is, that's the one place where you can speak freely. Whatever's on your mind, you can speak freely. Sometimes you can help your brother or sister. Sometimes they just need somebody to vent to.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They could just say one thing and then it's off their chest. You don't even realize that it's a problem per se. But
Right.
them just talking about it usually will solve the problems. And you mentioned earlier about the responsibility of the senior man. One of the things I'll talk about for a moment is my opinion of the senior man is making sure that the house stays in order. And I'm not talking about taking out the garbage or mopping the floor. I just mean when that senior man or woman sees there's an issue in the house, I feel like it's incumbent upon them to correct that issue if they can before it goes to the bosses, before it goes to the unions, or before it goes to all that stuff. We seem to get away from that a little bit, where our mentors aren't mentoring like we should be, where I feel like back in the day, and you can attest to this, that if there was an issue, you go to the senior man in the house or the senior woman in the house and say, listen, this is going on. I need your advice. What should I do?
Well, and the other thing too is over time, society has changed in general. And so we talked a little bit about how it seems some people are entitled. Obviously, the things that used to be done 25 or 30 years ago aren't done today, because when I first came on, the house captain, that was the law. Nothing went outside the house. It didn't go to the district chief.
Right.
House captain took care of it.
Right. It didn't leave your house. Exactly.
It never left the house.
Right.
Nowadays, it seems like the chiefs are being involved in minutia, which that's taking up their time.
100%.
When they need to be doing whatever they're doing. And so sometimes it seems like maybe it's just society in general seems to a certain extent, and this isn't all house captains, but to a certain extent, it's kind of rendered them in a position where they can't step in as much for fear of insulting someone, hurting someone, having something thrown at them that's taken way out of context or whatever. So nowadays, you have to tread lightly with everything.
You're absolutely right.
And so I think that's taken away some of that, it's not leaving the house stuff anymore.
Yeah, because unfortunately, like you just said, in today's society, as it's changed, that house captain can be on a hook because something wasn't done that shouldn't have left the firehouse, but technically, policy wise, it should have left the firehouse to
right.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying. You're absolutely right. I think that
and even with training,
right.
You have to be very aware. You have to be very sensitive to what's going on. You have to really be, it's hard to articulate, but you have to carry yourself in such a manner that you convey the information, but at the same time, you don't want to alienate anyone.
Right.
And you certainly want to be sensitive to everybody's individual needs. We're still going to teach you the fire service stuff, but there are certain parameters that you just have to work in. And I'm not saying that's bad, but you have to be careful. I've seen other podcasts and they're okay. I may not be a fan of some of the other podcasts out there. Sometimes I think that if you're from the outside and you watch a podcast, you may have a somewhat negative view of firefighters with some of the podcasts. And they're just talking like me and you are. But again, you have to be careful.
It's a culture.
It's a culture. And so we get it. And so there are certain things that can be said around the firehouse or certain actions that can be done around the firehouse, but it may not be for public consumption.
Absolutely right.
And sometimes I've seen some other podcasts, it's like, if somebody looking on the outside saw this, what would they think? Yeah. And so you just have to be careful. And I'm not going to put down this podcast. I'm just saying that overall, we have to be careful. And we have to a certain extent, change. You can change without getting rid of tradition. You can stay up with the times without getting rid of tradition.
Right.
But you do have to be careful because times have changed.
And I feel like we have a responsibility to not only the agencies we work for, but to ourselves as a family, as a brotherhood, as we talk about in sisterhood in the fire department. We don't want to portray ourselves in a negative light in the public, because that's going to affect everybody. And that's what sucks, is you could do something in wherever, in California, and in New Jersey, firefighters are going to feel it too, because it's a ripple effect.
Right.
So you're right. It's our responsibility to make sure that we portray ourselves in a perfect light.
And one of the things that I have really appreciated, I would go to classes for years, and I would be one of a few African-American firefighters there for years. As I mentioned, I was like the 5th African-American firefighter who was an instructor for the IAFF for quite some time. And the general president at one of our instructor conferences said, we need more diversity. We need more female firefighters. We need more people of color. And so the effort was made. That was maybe 15 or so years ago, 17 years ago, whatever it was. And now we've got some social unrest going that's kind of around that. And the superintendent of the Ohio Fire Academy, he was a firefighter for a suburban fire department down here in Cincinnati. And in fact, on our county urban search and rescue team, which I'm a member of, he was my squad leader. When he got up to the fire academy and became the superintendent of the fire academy, he reached out to myself and some other firefighters from the Cincinnati area who were African American, said, hey, we need to increase the diversity of the fire academy staff. We need to increase the diversity of the people we reach out to as far as students, not just people of color, but females. We need for the fire academy and the fire service to be representative of the people we serve and protect. And I have so much respect for him for doing that and wanting to have that conversation that right now can be uncomfortable for some people. But he wanted to do that. He's done it. The fire academy has continued to work towards goals of really diversifying. And it's nice to see that there are departments who, again, you can maintain the tradition, but who are willing to look at the world as it is and say, hey, this might be something that we need to address, and let's address it head on, but right. Do so in a civil and respectful manner and see if we can be agents of change.
Absolutely.
And I've really appreciated that.
What is it about the Cincinnati Fire Department that you respect the most? I know it's a tough question, especially with 29 years there, but.
The one thing that I respect most about Cincinnati is for the diverse people I have worked with in my career who have come from all types of backgrounds. And those people who I've worked with, I really respect the fact that they were willing to teach. I respect that tremendously. They're willing to teach. It's funny, when I look at the past 25 years I've been there, I've seen people, I remember working for a lieutenant. I was detailed to an engine company. And I remember when he made captain, he was my captain on a truck company. Then he became a district chief. Then he became an assistant chief. Now he's the chief of the department. He came on the department when he was 18 years old. Only job he's ever known.
That's great.
And now he came on the fire department in 1988. Now he is the chief of the department.
That's great.
So you got to respect a guy who goes from firefighter and moves up through the ranks like that. Those
are the best leaders because they get it.
I have met some fire chiefs. Of course, we go to fire departments all over the country. There's always going to be somebody that's going to complain about the chief.
Of course, yeah.
And sometimes it's unwarranted. Sometimes it's warranted.
They say it's lonely at the top.
It is, and you have to make some decisions that are not going to be always accepted by the rank and file, but You got to respect a guy who stands up and makes the decision, good,
Right.
bad, or indifferent. He
Absolutely.
made the decision.
Not easy.
It ain't easy.
So, Bobby, you teaching obviously means a lot to you. I can tell it means a lot to you. If you could say one thing to a firefighter looking to come on the fire department, what do you say to him? What's your best advice to a firefighter just coming on right now?
If you want it and it's your dream, don't give up. Get what you want.
And
that's what I would tell anybody. Get what you want.
You're a perfect example of that. You are a living example of that. That's it.
And I tell people that. I said, hey, look, I didn't get on when I wanted to, but I kept trying because it was something I wanted. And that's not just for the fire service. That's life. If there's something you want, go get it. Make it happen. You can't expect a handout. Make it happen for yourself.
Right.
All the opportunities I've had, I've never had a handout. I've always worked hard, whether it was, teaching the things I taught or getting on with the IFF teaching for the 12 years I taught for them, or teaching for the fire academy, teaching at the community college I've been with. I've been there for over 20 years.
Wow.
Teaching. Writing articles for fire engineering. I would have never thought that I could write an article for fire engineering, yet alone be a classroom presenter at FDIC 5 years. But it was something I wanted. It was something I was passionate about. I went after it. And, it takes a lot of work, and sometimes you get discouraged. Don't let discouragement get you down. Get what you want. You deserve it. But you got to work for it.
Being in Cincinnati, and it's a busy department with a lot of awesome history. That website you talked about is phenomenal. I'm so glad you turned me on to that because I loved everything about that. It's so cool to see the progression in the site, the amount of history. One thing I'll ask you is, looking back at your 25 years in Cincinnati, is there one call or one job that was memorable to you?
I have the ability to compartmentalize. And so after a while, runs just kind of...
They blend into each other.
They blend into each other, but there is one in particular. And the other thing is, too, I'm able to do that, because my mother being a nurse, she could separate things. And B, like we talked about earlier, I have an incredible support from my wife. It's funny because my daughter, who's 29, has never known me to be anything other than a fireman. But I actually did have jobs before that. But one run in particular, the truck company I was on for years and years, I think I was there for 12 years, was in an urban part of the city. Gun and knife club, lots and lots and lots of fires. I was detailed to the engine on a particular day, and we made a run just up the street from the firehouse. And what happened, the run was for an infant not breathing. And apparently one of the parents, I believe it was the father, they had the baby in the bed with them. And I think the father, if I remember correctly, worked nights.
Oh, I know where this is going. It happened to me.
Yeah. And rolled over on the baby.
Yep.
Smothered the baby. So we had a paramedic unit come. So the two paramedics were working the baby. I got on the paramedic. I wasn't a paramedic at the time, but I was on the medic unit with them, helping do CPR and doing whatever else. And the level 1 trauma center for children was 5 or 7 minutes away. We have 2 level 1 trauma centers in Cincinnati. University of Cincinnati Hospital Medical Center is our level 1 trauma. And then we have Children's Hospital Cincinnati, which is the pediatric trauma center. We load the baby on and we take off. Well, in the meantime, the engine company stayed back because the father was so distraught that he punched out a window in the house and just shredded his arm. So he's bleeding all over the place.
Right. Understand.
Again, you're distraught because you're thinking, I did this to my, and the infant, I don't even know if the infant was a month, maybe at most 2 months old.
Right.
That is the one run that I remember from the city. From the 29 years, I will never forget my first fire. That was just like, this is it. This is the real thing now. This isn't training. And it was with my suburban fire department, the first fire department I got on with. And I remember my first fire like it was yesterday. I can tell you who was in there with me. I can tell you what happened. I can tell you where it was. I've driven by the place on numerous occasions, and my wife always laughs because I'll look at the place and just smile. So, I remember my first fire. I remember my first quote unquote bad EMS run. And over the years, I've just had different experiences and different runs. Some of them, as you know, you get in the truck and you start laughing your head off because of it. Or you make some joke that was wholly inappropriate, but
absolutely.
You never do it in public. So, it's been a fun ride for me. It really has.
That's great. I got to tell you, Bobby, it was so fun to talk to you, get to learn about, your experiences in the fire department and your experiences, teaching, which is huge. I love the fact that you have so much charisma. I love the fact that you're teaching, you're mentoring other firefighters, you're leading by example, and the fact that you're able to bring your experiences now that you've had and teach other firefighters and mold other firefighters into a positive atmosphere that you have. You have so much positive energy and positive motivation. I think it's so important in the fire service right now. And I couldn't thank you enough for coming on to the show. It was so great to have you.
I've heard it said on every one of your podcasts, and it's true. It's not a cliche. It is, and you know this, it is the greatest job you will ever have.
100%. Bobby, thank you so much, brother.
No problem, bro.
Before we close, I'd be remiss to ask, is there one person in your career that you could say was either your mentor or your guiding light? I know it's a tough question because there's a lot of people.
There were three.
Okay.
There were three. When I went to the truck company that was in the urban area, and I spent 12 years there, it was an engine and a truck in the house. At the time I got there, I think the driver on the engine had maybe 25 years in or something like that. He retired after 34. So I worked with him probably 8 or 10 years.
34, wow.
And he was the engineer on the engine company. And he was a great mentor. Now I was on the truck.
Okay.
My driver on the truck. And back then we still had tractor drawn aerials. So my driver on the truck, in my opinion, and really it was the opinion of a lot of people in the fire department, was the best truck driver in the fire department, literally. He could put that tiller truck where no one else could put it.
It's a gift.
And the driver, the 2 other drivers in our house on the truck were trained by him.
Wow.
He helped write our driver's manual, but he was the most humble person. You could talk to him about anything, and he was just a fountain of knowledge. So those 2 guys, and plus my senior man on the rescue company who just retired, I think more than anybody helped mold me. I really do believe that.
Well, they did a great job, brother.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Well, I'm not going to say stay safe out there because we all know that this job, it's almost impossible to stay safe. But
especially now.
Especially now, yeah. But what I will say is to everyone out there, don't give up. Keep taking those tests. Keep applying. Never, ever, ever give up. And Bobby, I appreciate you saying those things because I think that's what people need to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of PintheQ Productions here at PintheQ Podcast with Bobby Shelton.